Hello everyone, welcome to another session of guitar demonstration. The topic for today will be the electric guitar. Joining me, I have Olman Alfaro. He's a PhD candidate at the Fred Fox School of Music. Welcome, Olman.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here and to talk a little bit about guitar.
So let's go through some of the basics. What was the reason that the electric guitar was invented?
Well, it's a combination of different things that happened at the same time in history. So this is guitar is actually the electric guitar is actually one of the newest instruments. It has less than 100 years. And back then, 1920s, about that time, there was this interest in electricity in general. Electricity was part of new inventions, new things happening, and guitar was in the right place at that moment. And at the same time, there were big bands, things like that. Like, you have the whole section of brass, percussion. Acoustic guitar was not,
It's not going to make it.
Yeah. So one of the ideas actually that at that moment was the ones that we know today as the dobro guitars, the
resonators.
The resonator guitars that sound really loud, but also they have a very specific sound. So there's not a lot of variety. So at that same time, there was an interest in Hawaiian music and Hawaiian as they perceived it at the time. Yeah. So lap guitars were what they called Hawaiian guitars at that moment. That was actually the first one to be commercially sold as electric.
As electric guitar.
It was called the frying pan. They were all looking for a solution of how to amplify the sound. And the first attempts were actually with a microphone, putting a microphone in the guitar. But the problem with that is back then microphones were not as they are today. And so they were, the sound was muffled or distortioned or
too much feedback.
Too much feedback, especially. Yeah. So it wasn't really working. At the same time, there were inventors trying with violas and violins. There was a whole thing going on, and at the same time, and it was all about trying to amplify so that they could play with bigger bands. So it wasn't until this frying pan was the first time this device was invented. That's why I have my guitar here, and this here, what we call a pickup, is a new way they found to do this. And there is this principle, if you see all electric guitars have, strings are made of metal, right? They're all metallic. Steel, yeah. And, or other, today there are other nickel or whatever. But the principle is, what we have here is a magnet. Basically, the original was single magnet and a coil around it. So the principle is that if that magnetic field is disturbed, but then it's disturbed by any metal, right? When you put something close to the metal, then there's a disturbance there, and that can be translated. It's called transduced. Actually, this is called transducer because it converts magnetic energy into electric energy. So that they found that they could that electric part send it as a signal to an amplifier. So that was the way they invented it.
And that was the easiest or the more practical solution that came up. So compared to acoustic or classical guitars, we have the sound just from the top of the guitar vibrating. And in this case, we have these pickups that absorb the sound of the guitar.
Yes, and this is a solid body guitar. The first ones were hollow body, like an acoustic guitar. That's why the first electric guitars were called Spanish guitars. For example, Gibson, that's a very famous company. The first commercially sold guitar was called ES, the model, which is electric Spanish guitar. And the problem initially, I don't know if I'm getting ahead with your questions, but the thing with these ones is that this pickups that are like one single coil is when you try to amplify the sound too much, especially back then, feedback starts becoming a problem. That hum starts
Uh-huh.
becoming a problem. And when it's a hollow body, there's even more that of a problem. So one of the reasons that to switch into solid body with electric guitars was that.
Was that a practical solution to avoid feedback and unnecessary vibrations? So I noticed you have 2 pickups in that specific guitar, and they are in different locations. Does that make a difference in the sounds?
It does, and actually has also a theoretical, engineering part behind it, which is very interesting because when a string vibrates, there are different harmonics playing at the same, sounding at the same time. Harmonics are mostly happening here are different from the ones that are happening here. So here it's what we call partials, which is the higher harmonic sounds. They are more present here. So the sound here sounds brighter.
Brighter.
Right. And usually it's more amplified also because there's more energy at the beginning. The vibration could be faster. And here it's more lower harmonics. So
it's more of a rounder, warmer sound as opposed to closer to the bridge. Now, I see you have a lot of buttons and levers there. Could you walk us through it, like how the combination of those things work together?
Yes, well, in electric guitars, there are a lot of different options and a lot of different companies and different inventions, and especially nowadays, it's not like it used to be back then. But this is actually a model that's one of it's based on a 50s design. This is based on a Fender Telecaster, which is one of the most famous, oldest models that still were very successful, and that's why they still do them, right? And one is usually tone control, like it's kind of actually like an equalizer. Back then, it makes it darker or brighter. The other one is a volume control, and this one, what it does is a switch that uses just this pickup here. If we put it here, in the middle, it's using both, and here it's using just this one.
And why is it important or relevant to have different sounds on the guitar? You play different styles with it depending on the pickup?
Yeah, that is a great question because that's what makes a difference, and that's why specific styles choose specific guitars. And this one is very, is well known in country music. Mm-hmm. Country music, usually you go here, and this is the brighter sound that you hear in country music. And in Telecasters,
it gives it the twang.
The twang, exactly. And that's like a trademark in Fender guitars, the oldest, right? That twang. And blues, for example, you want a darker, mellow sound, and that's why it's very common to go here. The middle has different uses. Could be accompanying, right? Or if you're like close to jazz, what you call comping. It's more like you normally choose the middle. But that's also from today's perspective is up to how you want to sound, and especially today, musicians have to be very flexible in going from one style to the other, and knowing all this is very, very useful.
Just for demonstration purpose, so you have a Telecaster style guitar, and what can you tell us about this type of design?
So this is very interesting because it actually has a more advanced option, which is this one here. So here what we have is actually one of the first things that started appearing in Gibson guitars back then, which is, if you see, this is this is just a single coil, and this one has 2, and this is what is called a humbucker. And it's a pickup that was created to remove that hum sound, that kind of feedback that was getting into hollow body guitars. But the other good thing about this is that the output is higher and can amplify a lot more. And that is why this is like a typical like rock guitar.
Because Stratocaster approach to it.
Yeah, because the humbucker also has that punch that it's necessary most rock music, and distortioned guitars usually have with that effect of distortion they usually have those humbuckers. This one that you have here, it's a very interesting one because it's a more advanced model, and it's also like this one, but it's called a mini humbucker. And the reason it was made like this is because it's very common today to switch pickups when guitar, take the one you have and put another one, and this one is made to fit into a single coil space. So that's why, but it sounds also like a punchier sound.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit fuller,
Yeah.
I feel. And you have another one over there.
Yes, this is this one here. Just a second to switch guitars here. This one is the result of the creation of a very famous guitar player, Eddie Van Halen, and this is one of he came up with things that are today like staple
Standard,
things in certain things in rock, which is actually adding a humbucker to this style of guitar. Before that, it was only in Gibson guitars, like bigger guitars, and then he put this one, and he experimented. Actually, this pickup has another way it is put into the guitar, which is directly attached to the wood.
As opposed to these ones, which is almost floating in a way.
Yeah, and yes, and then this is an 80s thing also. Older guitars also have there's what we call tremolo in the bridge, and tremolo is because we can pull or let the strings go loose, so that it creates that what we call dive bombs, or we can play with the tuning very easily. And if you hear Eddie Van Halen's music, it's all over the place, and so that gives that possibility of playing with that. And one extra thing that it's also common in this not as common, but it appears in some guitars, is this what is called a kill switch, that it just turns off the guitar, so it creates an effect when you do this click here.
So you have a lot more possibilities with that.
A lot more possibilities, yeah. And this one has 2 humbuckers, and you can see it's 2 double coils here. So it's just by looking at it, you know that this is good is to play rock music and loud music and metal and all that. Yes.
So what are some of the musical genres where we can find electric guitar?
Well, if we see it from today's perspective, it's everywhere, right? Guitar, it's become today, so especially with digital technology and all that, you can make a guitar sound like an organ. You can make a guitar sound like anything else. You can play, use effects to make it go lower, or you can do many things. So you can play electric guitar, basically anything today. But if we go in history, it was originally more related to jazz and to rock and roll, and it went from there into different all the different genres that were connected to rock, and all that also became part of that. And depending on the sound, it went into different directions, right? Like rock has different settings, and then jazz has different settings and different sounds, and the same with companies that were more specialized into different genres. So it's.
So for the electric guitar, we have a lot of combinations within the guitar itself. Also a lot of combinations with the amp, because it needs to be connected and amplified, and we can control the treble, mid, bass, and effects. And we also have the pedals. Can you tell us what pedals are and how they're used?
Well, with amplifiers, there's something that I think it's standard practice today, and comes from the history of amplifiers too, which is the first ones were what we call tube amplifiers, because before transistors, that was the main electronic component that was part of the amplifiers. And the thing with tube amplifiers is that they have a specific sound that guitar players, especially in rock and blues, they prefer a lot, and especially blues and country. It has a very loud, specific sound, like full of harmonics, and for more modern music, including metal music, although metal it could vary, but there is, what we call today like solid state, which is transistor-based amplifiers that use digital technology and all. I mean, today there are a lot of combinations between both, but it has a different sound, and it's more a sound that we associate with more modern music, and it's more processed sound, and They both have their space. There are also hybrid amplifiers that combine both. And on top of that, of the amplifiers, we also have pedals. And the thing with pedals is that they have different reasons, and that is processing the sound that comes out of the guitar and making it sound in different ways that we want them to sound depending on the genre or the style. So for example, pedal is just, I'm sure everyone has seen them, is just a box and you stomp on it to change what you want to change. So there is one category is like equalization. So make it, sound with more mid or treble or bass sound, so you can play with that. There's another category that is distortion, overdrive, and all that. That can go from very
This is more of the distortion sound.
Yeah, so could go from a little, like in blues, there's usually a little bit of what we call overdrive, which is like very slight distortion, to, like heavy metal music that could go into very, very, heavy sounds as full distortion. Then we have all of this category of echoes and reverb and all that. That's also very common in other instruments and in voice, right? That's an
So
effect.
it's a very versatile instrument because
Yeah.
you can control the amp, you can control the guitar, and the effects that you have on.
Yes,
on top of it.
and then we have the last category is what we call modulation, that it's actually changing the sound into other things. So that's where we call it something like chorus effects or flanger or phasers or
The
just
wah
playing with
pedal.
the wah pedal. All these things that you can do, and I have a pedal that you can actually make the guitar sound like an organ and or play one note and sound an arpeggio based on that, things like that. So that's a more modern thing, but it's also very, very common.
Now that we were able to set up the pedals, it will be great to see a short demonstration on some of the different effects and sounds that we can get from the electric guitar.
Sure, I'm going to base it more actually on the sounds the guitar itself can provide. And so right now it's using both pickups here. So it's a very normal way of playing, like accompanying very full sound. Right. For country music, as I was saying, this side here, it's more common.
And that's using the bridge pickup.
That's
correct?
using the bridge pickup, yes. And what I was saying, the blues has uses more this pickup and has that mellow. Right, so it's a different. If we compare, let's say, we do, and let's do bridge.
Okay, more brighter, more.
It's brighter here, right? Compared to, right? So.
And could you walk us through some of the pedals that you brought here today?
Yes. Well, actually, I'm using this one. I disconnected it because I was using it just as a tuning pedal, which is also a very common thing, right? To do have a pedal just for tuning, but I connected this distortion pedal. This is going to sound very different from before, so we stomp on it. And now, right, it's the sound we associate with metal music. This is also an Eddie Van Halen's pedal, which is very, very well known. And then the other pedal I have here. This one is called an Echo Brain. It's actually an echo pedal. And in the 50s, it was very common to use it. It's called what is called a slap echo. And it just, I play it once and there's an echo immediately after. So. So it's also really well used, and the echo could be longer. We could play with that too, and or do more repetitions of the echo, things like that.
You can select the duration of it and
You
mess
can.
it.
You can.
Great.
Yes.
So let's transition to the other guitar because it has a different construction and different sounds, so you can show us what it can do.
Yes, let's do that.
So now that we switched guitars, could you give us a quick recap on how these pickups are organized?
Yeah, so this one, this humbucker pickups, they have a higher output, which means it amplifies more the sound. It has a punchier.
It's a little bit louder,
sound.
fuller.
It's louder, fuller, heavier, right? In general. So, yeah. So this one, let me show you first. Maybe with using both pickups. It even sounds a little distorted, even without the distortion, because the gain is so high. Like, I can control it with the amp too, but still higher output. So that's how it sounds, both pickups. If I go here, right, and then bridge pickup here. And you know, this guitar is actually more, you can play clean, what we call without any effects, but it's more for rock music, and I have the right pedal for that here. So you can see that it's even using feedback is already coming in the.
So in this guitar we have what is known as a tremolo or a whammy bar. Can you give us a demonstration of how does that work?
Sure. Yeah. So it's term very commonly used in hard rock, metal, especially 80s, is what we call a dive bomb, and it's this sound here. We can also do harmonics. So that is the use of the tremolo bar, and then we have this here.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is the kill switch, right? Also very common with Eddie Van Halen, and I can do, let's say, a chord, right? Maybe because here we're in a closed space, you can hear the click, right? But in
a big concert, you won't
hear
it.
It wouldn't be heard.
So now we're going to have a demonstration with these guitars in a blues. In this next example, we're going to see a different way of playing the electric guitar. It's more commonly known in modern times for rock music and popular music, but it was also used a lot for jazz, and they have a different approach of playing the guitar. It's not as common to use the pick as in rock music, and it's very common to use more of your fingers. And there's many sounds that we can get also. So if you consider the sounds we get from the pickup, from your playing, from the amp, from the pedals, another layer are your fingers. So there was a guitarist called Wes Montgomery that actually used the fleshy part of the thumb to get a very dark sound. And it's very common that we can also use our fingers. And gives it more of a brighter sound. So in this next sample, you're going to listen to the comping, which translates to the accompaniment that is used for jazz guitar.